name is Matt Bach. I am with People's Mortgage. Our branch is in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And the type of people I serve, I mean, that really goes across the gamut. I've got first-time home buyers that I work with. I've got people that have bought 10 homes, investors that have bought 20 homes and continue to buy and sell homes, people that have been in the business, people that have not been in the business, people that know a lot about the process, people that don't know anything about the process, people that are numbers people that like to have more of a conversation about things. So it really, there's not one type of people that I work with. It's the people that honestly just want to buy a house and they want the best process to accomplish that goal.
Absolutely. I can't wait to learn more about just everything you do. So, to get us started, you've been in the mortgage industry for quite some time. How long have you been in the industry? How did you get started? And what keeps you motivated year after year?
I've been in the business now for over 25 years, and what really motivates me is the people, because each and every one of them are individual, and they all have their own goals. They all have their own reasons that they want to purchase. Some of them, it's an opportunity that they thought they'd never have. They might be the first people buying a house ever in their family. They might be someone who maybe had always gotten help from mom and dad, but they're going on their own this time. So it's for me, I enjoy the story. I love to hear why people are looking to buy a home. And I like to help them find their home, not just a house, because that's what it is for people. This is not just a piece of real estate for the people I'm helping. This is where they're going to potentially raise their kids. This is where they're going to spend the next 10, 20 plus years of their lives. So I love finding out that why. We always hear that, what's your why? And I love hearing that from people like, okay, what's your why as to why you're looking to purchase this home? Because again, for some people, it's different. I work with investors who just are looking at this as an investment, and I want to get it for the best price I can, get the best program I can to make the most money on it. And some people are looking at which house is going to be in the best school district and has the best yard for my kids and has a pool or has multiple bathrooms because we've got multiple kids and we want to try to avoid arguments in the bed, in the mornings for school.
Sure.
So for me, it's the excitement of each and every case, and each and every client that I work with, because it's always different.
It truly is kind of a personalized experience meeting everyone where they're at.
100%. And that's one of the things that I really try to put emphasis on is listening. If you've ever been, I know that I have, if you've ever been to the doctor and you start talking to them about what's bothering you, and before you even finish, they're saying, well, here's what this is. You got this, you got that. Take this medicine, take that. And it's like, wait a second, I'm not even done talking to you about what else is going on. And so I think honestly, one of the biggest things that I try to make a point of emphasis is to listen to people when they initially have that conversation with me about their goals. Because the process in and of itself is going to be the same regardless of what lender you use. You're going to have an application, you're going to have underwriting, you're going to have approval, and it's a process. But I think what I try to do for people is help them understand that it's not just a process for me. They're not just a number for me. They're not just a transaction for me. That I want to understand truly what their goals are, what they want to accomplish, because there are a ton of different financing options that are available. There are grants available for home buyers. There's 100% financing. There's more down payment. There's no down payments. But there's not a one size fits all for everybody. And so by listening up front to people as to what they want to get accomplished, it helps us all be on the same page, which truly makes the process very smooth. Now, I can't say it's not going to be stressful at all because you're making a pretty big purchase, but we minimize any type of stress involved through communication, making sure everyone understands the process. They understand where we are as we go along. And so for me, helping somebody get from, gosh, I didn't know that I could even qualify, to here's your keys for your house, is it just makes you feel good, keeps you motivated every time that happens, because you know the next person you talk to is going to be a whole new story.
Absolutely. I'm sure that's such a full circle moment to see them from the beginning and then seeing them get their keys in the end, and it was all worth it.
It is, and again, there are some people that, whether it's through media or their parents or their neighbor, said, "Oh, well, you can't buy a house unless you have 20% down, or you can't. There's no grants available, or you can't do this unless you have that." That's the biggest thing that I think can get in the way sometimes, is people's misconception about the process. And so again, by listening to them and finding out, okay, what do you really want to accomplish? Of course, everyone wants to buy a house. Everyone wants the lowest rate. Everyone wants the lowest payment. But okay, when we get beyond what everybody wants, what's their motivation? What's going to make the most sense for them? Because we want ultimately to meet their goals as a home buyer, so that one, they're happy at the end, and then two, they're comfortable with what they've just taken on. Great, it's nice you have an amazing house, but you don't want to be sitting in your living room on folding chairs because you pay too much and you can't afford your mortgage payment. So that's where we really try to help, and I try to help people stay focused on what payment they're going to be comfortable with. Because I think just innately, and again, through just what people hear on the news or the media, there are certain, and you realize he's doing this for 25 plus years, there are certain questions that people are just like trained to ask, like, well, what's the rate today? Or how much do I qualify for? Well, in all honesty, it doesn't matter what people qualify for, because 99.9% of the people that qualify for a mortgage are going to qualify for more than what they want. So what I like to do is say, okay, let's not focus on what you qualify for. Let's focus on what's important, which is, where do you want your payment to be so you're comfortable for your budget?
For sure.
And then we work backwards and say, okay, if you want your payment to be here, then we should probably stick around a purchase price of this, because we know, because of the down payment you're planning on doing, that's going to get your loan amount to where it needs to be to meet that payment goal.
Kind of just looking at the whole picture.
It's important,
Yeah.
because there's some people, I mean, everyone's payment conscious, but there are some people that are more concerned about the monthly payment than others. And there's some people that are more concerned about how much money do I have to bring to closing than others. Some people have a good amount of savings for one reason or another, but their month-to-month income is tighter, so they're more concerned about, what's my monthly payment going to be. And then there's other people that make a ton of money for whatever reason or another. They don't have a whole lot of savings, so they're more concerned about minimizing that money to close than about the monthly payment. And that's where again, it sounds simple, but in having 4 kids and a wife that I think all like me, you learn to listen, because that's such an important part of understanding where people are coming from, and really letting them tell you what they want. Because I'm just, like I tell people all the time, this is your loan. This is your ship. You're steering it. You're going to go whatever direction you want to go as far as how much down payment you want to do, this and that. I'm just here to help you navigate those trails, or those seas, however you want to say it, to get to that final point of meeting your goals.
Absolutely. I like the way you put that. You're kind of just guiding them through the process to make sure they get through their game plan to where
Sure,
they want to be.
sure. Yeah, I tell people all the time, I said, listen, if I mention something to you, please don't think that I'm trying to steer you in that direction. It's just my job to let you know what your options are. Like, there are certain loan types that allow for someone to have a co-borrower, or get a gift from family to help with a down payment or closing costs. And so I will always let people know what their options are, just so they know. I don't want them, the last thing I want to have happen is for them to get to closing or even in the middle of the process and say, "Oh, I heard about this thing. Why didn't you mention that? I could have done that." You know, my wife's an attorney, and she always tells me, you can't use that assume word because we know why. And so I don't like to do that. So I just tell people, listen, I don't know if this is going to be an option for you or if this is feasible for you, but I want to let you know that this could be an option to help you get there, or this could be an option to help you get there. And if you say, no, that's not realistic, or I can't do that, fine. But at least I know that you knew that that was there.
For sure. Just kind of keeping them informed and realistic goals.
Absolutely.
And to kind of go off of that, who is People's Mortgage Company and what makes your branch stand out in the Fredericksburg market?
Well, I personally think People's Mortgage is me. It's the people I work with, and that's why I honestly it's going to sound cheesy, but I think the name is perfect. When I met the owner, when I met the executives of People's Mortgage, that was the impression I got from them, even before they said that. We're all about the people. But I got that as soon as I met them. We're based out of Arizona, but the owner of the company typically flies into Freddie, or not Freddie, but into our area at least twice a year just to kind of see how things are going. The COO of the company flies in a couple of times a year to check in and just to touch base and make sure we're getting the support we need. So if I was to say who is People's Mortgage, it's the people. It's me. It's my assistant. It's my processor. It's my underwriter. It's the owner. It's my team. It's honestly whoever you're working with, because we all feel that our goal is to serve and provide support to who we're working with. And so whoever along the process our clients are working with, that's who People's Mortgage is, because we're all focused on the end goal of providing excellent service, excellent communication to help people feel comfortable as they go through the either the purchase process or the refinance process, whatever they're doing. We want them to think that, man, that was so much easier than I thought it was going to be, because people get worked up about stuff. They get all anxious about buying a house because they've heard horror stories about this or that. And some of the best reviews and comments that I get from people at the end is like, Matt made the process so much easier and smoother than I could have ever imagined. I had one person tell me that, well, maybe he's got an issue with shoes, but he told me that buying a house for him was easier than buying a pair of shoes and smoother than buying a pair of shoes. So it's when you get those comments at the end and those reviews, it makes you feel good, because there can be so much anxiety for people that are thinking about buying a house. Like, they don't know what to expect. People don't buy a house every day. So this is, for a lot of people, the first time they're doing it. And so to help them understand the process, and that's honestly one of the biggest things I do, and I know one of the biggest things that my team does, is we communicate. I send updates every single week to my clients, let them know, hey, listen, this is where we're at. This is what the next step is. We're on track for closing, because a lot of people get nervous about that. Are we good for closing? Or, is this back? Is the appraisal back? So I'm always updating them, letting them know, listen, everything's on track. We're good. Enjoy your weekend. I got this.
Good communication is such key in a field like this. I think that that's awesome. And I think it's also so reassuring to have such an amazing team of people behind you to help move the process along. There's nothing better than that.
There's not. And you're right. I mean, every lender has rates. Every lender has, an application. But I will tell you that I get more positive feedback from my clients, from the referral partners I work with, whether it's a realtor, whether it's, I have an amazing builder client that I work with out of Richmond, Main Street Homes. The feedback I get from them, it's typically the first thing that comes from their mouth is the communication. thank you so much for helping me through the process of always staying in touch, letting me know where we were. People rely on, especially for something that's unknown to them. If you're, like I said, if you're going to buy a pair of shoes, you don't need the shoe salesperson to come out and say, I'm going to go look for a pair of nines. I'll be right back. And, you know, but when you're buying a house, it's good to know where things are, and what I try to do is kind of put myself in their shoes, not to keep on going back to shoes, but to put myself, in their perspective because sometimes I've seen other lenders, and because I get people that come to me from other lenders and they say, oh my gosh, I had no idea what was going on. They didn't tell me this or they didn't tell me that. And so it can, especially when you've been doing this for a long time, sometimes you get in the habit of thinking what they want, which I try to, do that, the listening part, but then also not realizing that even though you do this 10, 12, 13 times a day, this is their first time doing this. Or it's not their first time. This is their time of doing this. So even though something seems standard to you, it's not to them. So it's important to think about things from their perspective, like, it's on track, or the appraisal is going to be fine, or this is fine. But it comes into understanding, and I take a lot of pride in being able to, I don't know if I want to say read people, or just maybe it goes back to listening, get a feel for, okay, this person, they need more, they need a little more communication, a little more contact. Some people I work with, all they care about is numbers. Tell me the numbers. Great. I'm good. If anything changes with the numbers, let me know. Other than that, do your thing. Some people just want to feel like more warm and fuzzy. Like, hey, listen, we're good. We're on track. You touch base with them a couple times a week, even if it's just to do that. Like, listen, there's not a whole lot of change that's happened in the last couple of days, but I just want to touch base, let you know that we're still on track. Everything's fine. And it puts them at ease, because I tell people all the time, I would rather have them reach out to me and ask questions, because that's what I'm here for, rather than sit at home and be worried about something that isn't a big problem or isn't a big deal.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. And, with that, what is one of the most important things you focus on when meeting with a client for the very first time?
Really, it goes back to the listening, listening to what their goals are, not because most people, especially this day and age with everything's electronic, most people have an application done. I might, usually have an initial conversation with them, but then they're usually ready to get the application done, which then I'll review. And it can be easy sometimes to think, okay, well, here's how many assets they have, and here's the credit score, and here's this, and here's that. So this should be the type of loan they want to do. You can't do that, and I will tell you, when I first started, that was something I would do. I'm not going to lie. You think, well, I'm the expert. I'm the one that you should listen to what I tell you to do. No, it's not how it works. The longer I've been in the business, you realize that no matter what it is, honestly, whether it's mortgages, life, relationships, if you're not listening to the other person that you're trying to have a partnership with or a relationship with, it's not going to work out.
Absolutely.
So for me, it really comes back to listening to what they say, because people will tell you what their concerns are. And again, with the home buying process, there's a lot of anxiety that people start with. So by listening, that initial, meeting we have, it helps, one, that they know that you're willing to listen and you're not going to just tell them what to do. And two, and I've seen it, people sitting in my office, across the desk from me, and you can see in their face when after a half hour, 45 minutes, 3 hours, whatever it is, it's like a weight of the world got taken off their shoulders, because they know that you're listening to them and they know that you've got their best interest in mind.
Absolutely. And, going off of that as well, talking about communication, many clients highlight your excellent communication and guidance throughout the process. What other things do you do to ensure buyers feel informed, supported, and confident every step of the way?
Education. I truly feel that it's important that people understand the process. You know, there's a million types of financing loans out there. There's different ways of qualifying for things, ways to use different types of income, different types of assets, different types of loans. So I think explaining things to people and helping them understand the process, and again, to go back to the kids, it's not one of those, well, you do it because I said so. It doesn't, you don't do that. You say, listen, here's what our options are. You know, this is, these are the benefits of option A. These are the benefits of option B and option C, or however many it is. What I always tell people is, listen, we're going to get the application done, and then we're going to say, okay, there's these maybe 5 or 6 financing options that you qualify for. But as we talk about what your goals are, we're going to narrow those down and say, okay, well, now that I know what your goals are, what your plans are for the house, whether it's going to be a long-term home for you or a short-term home, because you're going to be getting new orders. I do a lot of veterans loans. So a lot of people will say, listen, I'm going to be getting new orders in 3 years. I'm going to be out of here. So that impacts those goals for their home buying process. What's most important? Is the lowest rate most important, or maybe a little bit higher rate that allows for a lender credit to cover some of the closing costs, because you're not going to have that loan as long, so the rate isn't as impactful. But overall, it's just really helping people understand what each of their decisions means and how it impacts them. Okay, if you choose this type of loan, this is what that means for your payment, for your long term. How much interest are you going to pay over the next 5 years? If you plan on leaving in 5 years. So I'm a big believer in the education and knowledge. I'm always trying to help my realtor partners and my builder partner understand a little bit about the finance process. Not that they're going to get into a deep conversation with the clients, but it's good for them to have a little bit of a knowledge to understand where the market is right now. Are we trending in a good direction for us as far as the rates go? Is the market trending in maybe a not so good direction right now? How are the programs? Are there any new programs that have come out? Recently we had one of our investors released a new grant for heroes, police, fire, teacher, education, healthcare, all that good stuff. And it was a very broad reaching grant that included a lot more people than what the typical grants do. So when I hear those new things come out, I try to let my referral partners know about those and their clients so that we can see if they qualify for them, because we want to try to get every advantage that we can to help people keep as much money in their pocket and ultimately reach their purchase goals.
There's always options, right?
There is, and there's a lot of options out there. And honestly, not every lender has every option. I've talked to people before that said, well, I've already talked with so-and-so lender or this a lender, and this is the program that seemed to be the best fit. I mean, I can tell even in the last year to year and a half, I've had over a handful of clients that I've talked with that had talked with a lender already. But then when we talked and we kind of got into what their goals were, I said, well, it seems like this option may be a better option for you. Oh, they didn't mention that. I said, well, they may not be approved for it, because not every lender is approved for every type of loan or every type of grant. So that's why I always tell people, listen, it never hurts to get a second opinion. Even if I was the first one and they want it, fine. I may not have something that somebody else has. I mean, that's not typically the case, but it can't hurt to check, because the ultimate thing we want is for people to feel that you have their best interest in mind. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to help them understand the process and not just tell them, hey, listen, I got this. Just, you can go do what you're doing. Educate them, help them understand what's going on, because for most people, this is going to be the biggest investment they make in their life, until they buy another house or something. So the more we can educate them and provide them knowledge about the process, first of all, that's going to, again, release some of that anxiety and concern they have, but they're going to appreciate that. Just like as if you were, again, at a doctor's office and instead the doctor is saying, hey, listen, just take this medicine and you'll be fine. Well, why? Can you explain to me why I need this medicine, or What's it going to do to me? What are the side effects? So I think the more information we can provide to people, the better the process is, and not to be afraid of providing knowledge. I've ran across some people that say, well, you don't want to tell people too much. Well, that doesn't make sense. Why not? Why would you not want to tell somebody something? You know, this is important. They need to know all the aspects of buying a house, and what that entails, and, what their financing means. And if this is an adjustable loan they're doing, what does that mean? So it's important to provide that knowledge to people.
Absolutely. It's a big milestone for a lot of people. So to make sure that, everyone does their homework and it's done right, that's great. And I think this question is self-explanatory, but why should someone choose to work with you for their purchase or refinance instead of another lender?
I think, it'd be easy to say, oh, well, I have the best rates, but in all honesty, all lenders are working in the same market. We're all going to have pretty similar rates. There's, in the early 2000s when things were like the wild, wild west, and, there was some crazy programs, which unfortunately led to, the big crash we had. I think overall, you're going to get my 100% attention during the process. I don't put people into boxes. Oh, you're this type of buyer, or you're this type of buyer. It's every single person I work with is a new start for me, and they get my full attention to make sure that we're finding the best fit for them. They're going to get unbelievable communication from me. They're going to get unbelievable service from my team and I. I mean, the rate is what it is. That's going to shake out. But I promise, and I tell people this all the time, to be perfectly honest. I say, listen, if you look online long enough, you're going to find some lender that's got a lower rate than me. It's going to happen. Someone's going to have a 0.25% lower rate or an 8% lower rate. But I'm willing to put my reputation on it that you're not going to get the same type of service, the same type of communication, the same type of education from another place that you're going to get from me.
Definitely. And the quality of your work 100% shows in the results that have came out so far. So,
Sure. Yeah.
absolutely.
It's great to, I think the company sends out an email after the closings and, ask for, comments and reviews. And I know, like I said, I know that the builder that I work with, Main Street Homes, they send out a survey to clients, and it's great to get those 5-star reviews or all 10s. But what really hits home for me are the comments. Like, again, this was simpler than I ever could have thought it was. You were so helpful all along the way. You answered your phone every time I called, or if you missed it, you called me back within an hour. The emails were answered promptly. And it doesn't have to be something that's like a long drawn out thing. It's just acknowledging people. Like I said, if I happen to be in a meeting, that happens. But a quick text, hey, listen, I saw that you called in a meeting. I'll get right back to you. Just touch base, because again, when people are going through this process, sometimes they can get anxious about some of the steps, because a lot of the things that are happening, they can be happening quick. They don't have a whole lot of control over them sometimes. A lot of things are reliant upon an appraisal report or an inspection that they probably haven't done before. So helping them understand, what does that mean? Who's the appraisal for? How does that get factored into the process? What's the difference between an inspection, a home inspection, compared to a home appraisal? They're totally different, two different things. So providing that guidance to people to help them feel comfortable from start to finish, and from start, I mean, like the first word that comes out of my mouth when I talk to them up until they get their keys and even beyond. One of the things I tell people all the time, that listen, great, we're closed, congratulations, but I'm still here. If you have questions afterwards, one of the things I do for people is, once we settle on their purchase, and after they get settled in a couple weeks later, we're going to have a conversation like, okay, listen, here's where we are right now. If the market gets better, here's where we need to get to as far as like maybe rates, or to maybe make a refinance financially beneficial for you. Because one of the unfortunate things about buying a house is that there are some things that are recorded, of course, public record, and so they're going to get a bunch of marketing. I just had a client reach out this week saying, oh, I got a thing in the mail saying that regarding this loan with people's mortgage, if I don't call them today, that my warranty is going to this and that. And I'm like, sir, that's marketing. I said, if you look at the very, very bottom of the page in the fine print, it's going to tell you we're not associated with people's mortgage. Companies, they hire people to go out to the courthouses and pull records, and they do mass marketing, and they're hoping for that trigger words like urgent or last notice or final notice to catch them. So I want them to realize that even though we closed, I'm still their resource to help them with that. He he blessed me like 5 times on the phone, thanked me so many times for helping him. He was so nervous that he had missed something as it said final notice and urgent. And he's like, I've been stressing about this for a couple of days. I said, sir, from now on, if you ever get anything like that, reach out. I can confirm, yes, that's from us, or no, it's not, because that's what companies do. And they reach out to people once they get that public record to try to get the marketing calls to come in. So I want them to know that I'm their mortgage person for life. I'm not going anywhere. This is my path and I enjoy it. I love the people I work with, and I want them to feel like they can always reach out to me, whether it's, during the process, whether it's the day of closing or 2 years after closing, that my number hasn't changed in 25 years. It's not going to change, and I'm always here to help them.
That is super reassuring to know that they can reach out to you anytime afterwards, whether it's for some more information or just keeping up with you.
Sure. No, hey, we do. We keep in touch. Of course, the social media, you see people, and usually you're friends with them on Facebook after closing or even during the process, and you see their kids growing up or playing sports or going to college, or, maybe they had a special anniversary, or so it's great to keep in contact with them beyond just the loan process, because I find that a lot of the people I work with, and maybe the majority of people I work with, we end up developing a relationship that's beyond just that loan process, where it becomes more of a friendship because you learn so much more about them, their families and what they're doing with their lives.
Absolutely. That's awesome.